The walls were closing in, or at least that's how it felt to Marcus. The grey concrete pressed on his chest like it was breathing with him, slow, heavy, and angry. 23 hours a day inside a box the size of a bathroom. No window to see the sky. No human voice except the guards who barked orders and slammed the steel door. On his 87th day in solitary confinement, Marcus began talking to the sink. At first he was joking, just to pass time, but soon he was whispering secrets to it. "They can't break me," he said, staring into the drain like it was listening. But when the drain whispered back, Marcus froze. The voice was faint, a whisper that came from somewhere deep below the cell floor. "They already have." Marcus backed up, his heart racing, eyes darting around the concrete walls that had no life, no color, no escape. He pressed his hands over his ears, but the whisper came again. "You're not leaving here. Ever." Then came the sound of breathing. Not his. Not the guards. A slow, steady breath echoing from the vent above his bed. Marcus jumped up and screamed for help, pounding the door with both fists until his knuckles bled. But no one came. And then, suddenly, the vent went silent. Marcus stared at it for a long time, waiting for the noise to come back, waiting for any sound that would remind him the world outside still existed. But there was nothing, just silence. The kind of silence that could drive a man mad. Now you might think Marcus was already crazy. But 3 months earlier, he was just another inmate serving time for armed robbery. A mistake he made in his 20s that cost him everything. Back then he was loud, confident, and sure of himself. But that was before the fight in the yard, before the guard dragged him by the arm to the solitary wing, known by inmates as the hole. The hole was where time stopped. There were no clocks, no sunlight, no voices, only the hum of the fluorescent light and the drip from the broken pipe behind the toilet. At first, Marcus tried to stay strong. He exercised, counted cracks in the wall, and whispered rap lyrics under his breath to keep his mind busy. He even marked the days with scratches behind his bunk. But soon, he lost count. The days and nights blended together like one long nightmare that never ended. The guards called him Ghost Eyes because of how empty his stare became. They said it happened to everyone who stayed too long in solitary. Your eyes stopped looking at the world and started looking inside your own head, and that's the most dangerous place to be. Sometimes Marcus swore he could hear footsteps outside his door when no one was there. Once, he thought he heard someone crying in the next cell, but the guards told him the cells nearby were empty. That's when he started to question what was real. Then one night, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, he saw something move in the corner of his cell. A shadow, small, fast, and human-like. His breath caught in his throat. "Who's there?" he whispered. No answer, just the hum of the light. He tried to convince himself it was his imagination. He wanted to believe that. But when he sat up, the shadow moved again, closer this time. Marcus stood, trembling. "Show yourself!" he yelled, his voice echoing off the walls. And then, the light flickered. Once, twice. Then it went out completely. Pitch black, no sound, no air, just darkness swallowing him whole. Marcus screamed. He pounded the steel door, shouting for the guards, but his voice disappeared into the thick silence of the hallway. His hands scraped against the wall as he searched for the light switch, his breathing sharp and panicked. Then from the vent above him the whisper came back, louder this time. "You can't escape your mind, Marcus." He froze, every muscle in his body locked. His voice shook. "Who are you?" Silence. Then a slow chuckle, echoing through the vent like it came from deep underground. That's when Marcus realized this wasn't just the darkness of the cell. This was the darkness inside him, and it was finally talking back. The lights flickered again. Something was standing in the corner, and this time it was smiling. The thing in the corner didn't move. It just stood there, grinning, a pale face half hidden in the darkness. Marcus blinked, praying it would vanish, that it was just another trick of his imagination. But when the light flickered again, the smile was still there. "Who are you?" Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. No answer, just that faint chuckle again, low and broken, like it came from someone who hadn't laughed in years. The air grew colder. His breath showed in the dim light as tiny clouds. Then the whisper came again. "You brought me here." Marcus stumbled backward until his spine hit the metal bunk. His heart hammered in his chest. "No, no, you're not real," the voice hissed. "You made me real." Then the light blinked once more, and the figure was gone. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, trembling. He wanted to scream for the guard, but he'd done that so many times before that no one came anymore. They thought he was faking it, just another inmate losing his grip. He sat there for hours, staring at the vent, afraid to blink. When the light finally stayed on, the cell was empty again. But Marcus wasn't the same. Something inside him had cracked wide open. Later that morning, when breakfast came through the slot, the guard barely looked at him. "Eat up, Ghost Eyes," the guard muttered. "You're starting to look like one." Marcus didn't touch this. A food. His hands were shaking too hard. He stared at the tray, the cold oatmeal, the dry toast, and then noticed something strange. On the edge of the tray, scratched faintly into the metal, were words. 4 small words that made his stomach drop. "You can't leave me." He dropped the tray and stumbled back, hitting his shoulder against the wall. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He tore the blanket off his bed, stuffed it under the door crack, and backed into the corner, eyes wild. The guard came hours later to collect the tray, and found Marcus sitting on the floor, knees to his chest, whispering to himself. "Who are you talking to, Johnson?" the guard asked. Marcus looked up slowly, his voice hoarse. "The man in the vent." The guard frowned. "There's nobody in that vent." But Marcus only smiled. "He says the same thing about you." That night, the light went out again. Only this time, it didn't come back on. The silence in the cell was thick, pressing, endless. Marcus began to hum, quietly, shakily, to fill the emptiness. He didn't know what song it was, only that it made the silence hurt less. Then, from the vent above, the humming joined in, perfectly in tune. Marcus froze. His body stiffened, breath catching in his throat. The voice wasn't mocking him. It was matching him, note for note, as if it knew the song better than he did. "Stop!" Marcus shouted. "Stop copying me!" The humming stopped. Then, after a long pause, came 3 words that made his blood run cold. "We are the same." Marcus slammed his fists against the door again. "Guard! Somebody help me!" But the only sound that answered was his own echo. His voice sounded strange now, stretched, like it came from inside the vent instead of his throat. He backed away slowly, whispering, "You're not real. You're not real." But the whisper that came back said, "Neither are you." Marcus felt something in, sighed him snap. He covered his ears, screamed, and dropped to the floor. The walls seemed to close in, the ceiling breathing down on him, the shadows swallowing every inch of light. When the guards finally opened the door the next morning, they found Marcus sitting in the middle of the cell, smiling up at the vent. His eyes were wide open, unblinking. On the wall behind him, written in what looked like blood, were the words, "The mind never sleeps." They moved him to the prison hospital wing after that, but Marcus didn't speak anymore. He just stared at the ceiling, humming that same quiet tune over and over again. Doctors called it solitary-induced psychosis. They said he'd lost touch with reality after too long in isolation. But sometimes, late at night, the guards swore they heard two voices humming in his cell. One came from Marcus, the other came from the vent, and neither one ever stopped. The end.